How should somebody think about real estate investments?
Today, there are three ways to play real estate, at least from an equity standpoint.
Today we have Karan Virwani, Managing Director and CEO of WeWork India.
A lot of people don't come from real estate backgrounds, have no idea how to operate real estate.
In India, real estate means buying your home or investing in residential or commercial properties.
With an extremely small check, you can actually own some square footage in a larger portfolio. India, we're still talking commercial REITs. Like if you look at the US, 90% of the market are REITs. There are residential REITs, there are storage REITs, there are hospital REITs.
Watch till the end to learn the unconventional route to make your fortune in the real estate.
Let's say you have 10 crores and now you have a worldview of real estate also. Today, how would you allocate that across asset classes? And what
As
would
of
you
today, I'd put all into the WeWork India stock because I feel like the upside is unmatched. But we have a business itself which is compounding. To me, a more passive approach is what I prefer because I don't even have time to deal with it. So mutual funds make sense, and depending on your risk appetite, I prefer like 40-50% in hard equities, like between large cap and mid cap. I have maybe 20% of my portfolio in, let's say, like a fixed income type instrument. So that's about 60%. 10% I've done for like maybe some VC startup type investing, and then like 20% keeping some liquid cash and some fund money.
Yeah. No, it's very clear. I think you're saying that essentially the compounding part is the core business which you run and you have greater control over, and outside of that, it's a fairly diversified portfolio to give you stability overall.
Yeah.
But did you get to this point and clarity, or did you make some mistakes along the way?
Mate,
What were some of the big mistakes that like come to mind?
I think listening to, people or bankers just trying to sell you certain products. I've been through that. So like insurance products and, just put in this policy, that policy, this policy, that policy. So it's just like been such a waste of maybe time of money.
Yeah.
I've tried to invest directly into stocks a lot. I still do if I know something that's happening, but I think previously just, someone said put in Bajaj Finance, which is still probably the best
Good example.
best investment I've made, but just giving you some random stocks and say like buy this, buy that.
Yeah.
And which is spending so much time working and doing all of that, you can't pay attention tomorrow if you needed to exit a position, hold a position, reinvest. Like, obviously not doing it in the most optimal sense.
Yeah.
So that transition from having, let's say, like 30 stocks or even like 15 stocks, I slowly consolidated just maybe like 5 or 6 companies which I know, which I can kind of track, themes maybe that I understand or are bullish on in terms of individual stocks. But, more recently that I've moved a lot and primarily now just deploy within mutual funds itself.
No, I think you made the case for what we do. So I think it's really good. We've spoken a lot about your investments, but what was it growing up in such a family? What was the stage of the business when you were young? How involved was the entire family in the business at that point?
So my granddad actually moved from, Sindh and then to Bombay, and then very early on in my dad's life, I think when he was in the 8th grade, moved to Bangalore and started construction business. What they used to do actually in Bombay was do just basements of buildings, of some of the earlier buildings, and then 1 or 2 developments. Ended up coming to Bangalore and, setting up a similar development business in India, very small scale. This was very, very early when I was maybe between the age of 1 and 5. And then I just remember when I was sort of 5 years old, waking up one morning and everything in the house was packed. And my mom really told me your school bus is going to bring you back from school to a different address and that's going to be our new house or whatever. But what had happened then was my dad had basically split with my granddad and his brother.
Mm-hmm.
Although they, did a very good job to make sure like me and my brother didn't feel it as much. But I remember moving to a rented apartment. We didn't have beds or furniture or anything like that for a long period of time. We were just kind of doing mattresses on the floor. So the stage of the business was was basically at negative. There was some debt that my dad started with. And then over the next, 15, 20 years, really got to see him sort of build that business or build Embassy while I was also growing up in, from the age of maybe when I was like 30 to 20 was when it really accelerated. So around 2002 is when Embassy Golf Links and the large office development started to happen. And then post that is where we really saw the market boom and also Embassy's growth happen. So that obviously had a huge impact on what I know of work ethic, what I know it takes to build something this large, how much I appreciate what is built, and also sort of, glad that it wasn't a case where I was sort of like just born into that much privilege or the kind of scale that the business is in today, and really got to see it. I think that was a very impactful and a grounding part of my personality.
You've seen this tough part where you're sleeping on mattresses, small houses, etc. And then one fine day you feel like you've arrived. Do you like remember that time when you feel like, okay, you have done well as a group, as a company, as a family, that you're now wealthy?
I think it was when I was maybe in college or actually in university where I think like a big sort of jump kind of happened. And I would say one big moment, probably if I have to like pinpoint it, is when my dad moved to the house that he's actually living in right now, which is, it's an amazing like place. It's over 30 acres. It's in this riding school where we've grown up our entire lives. Yeah, I think that was like a clear elevation of lifestyle,
Yeah.
from what we been used to, which was just living in an apartment for like a long period of time. So yeah, I think if I have to put a moment to it or a
Is that when you moved to when he moved to the 30-acre house?
yeah, I think that was clear. Like it was, yeah.
It was obvious right
It
now.
was, yeah, it was.
Karan, now switching gears to the business side, Embassy was a new developer. Bangalore was also expanding at that time. At which point was the inflection point, like when it really made sense that now we are a large development company?
I think it married a lot with Bangalore's office boom itself. So like I said, 2002 is when Embassy Golf Link started, which is a tech park in Bangalore. That was really like the start of it. And I think it's about 4.5 million or 5 million square foot park. And then, Manyata, which is Embassy Manyata, which is the next big business park that we kind of did and started developing, which was like 14 million or is 14 million now fully built up. It started off much smaller, but, we could see that this story of office demand, etc., was kind of playing out. But it kind of accelerated exactly with the IT boom in Bangalore. And there are a few developers like us, Prestige, even RMZ, etc., that built a lot of those assets and all of that real estate in Bangalore. So that I would say was the trajectory that the company sort of went into, and it kind of got larger. So from Manyata, then we ended up acquiring a very large tech park, which is now Embassy Tech Village, right on Outer Ring Road. And then I think from that, where was the moment where Blackstone ended up actually becoming partners with us.
Yes.
That institutionalized the business in a large way. Started, from a private family-owned business. We now had a global private equity player in the business.
Yeah.
So things like governance, how we were running the business, how we thought about the business, who we hired. I think all those things started to really change. And when we did the REIT, which was in 2019, the Embassy REIT, I think that was a massive moment for the company. It was like our IPO moment, right, where the largest part of our business was now listed. We were the first ones to really do it. It was Asia's largest REIT, along with a partner like Blackstone. So I think that really solidified, us amongst the top like 2 or 3 developers in the country at that point in time.
No, makes sense. There's so many innovations that happened as a part of the Embassy Group. I remember 2018-19, it burst on the wealth management scene because the REIT was about to go public. I think some of us had an opportunity to invest, I think just prior to listing, and then it went public thereafter. Today, Embassy REIT is about 40,000 crores plus in market cap. It's, I think, 25% of the total listed REIT market. So in that sense, also very large. How do you see this REIT space evolving? SEBI just designated them as equity instruments for purposes of classification.
I think that it was long overdue, and it's actually only this year where people are really, external like investors have really started to understand the value of the REIT. So from a developer standpoint, it's it's an amazing model. It will bring more institutional players. It will also mean more better quality assets, better quality structures and deal terms and tenants and etc. So people will be really trying to build scale, build quality, and not try to go down the strata sale model, which is horrible for someone who's a customer and a tenant. But also for the developer, you end up being able to keep the asset for so much longer, and you can constantly keep really milking, what you built and all of the work that's done to get the building and all of that up to it. So with the tax benefit, the ability to get units without cap gains once you actually do the listing, etc., is like an amazing unlock, right? And it also, I will think, take away a lot of the dirt that real estate has historically been known for in terms of, black money and cash and all of that, because you have like a proper legitimate vehicle now for a proper exit without losing as much of the value as you'd want. From a end customer standpoint, hard assets and real estate has predominantly been where a lot of families' savings, wealth ends up going.
That's right.
Right. And it's always been super illiquid, very concentrated into an actual location or a tenant or, whatever it is. And a lot of people don't come from real estate backgrounds, have no idea how to operate, manage real estate, how to manage a tenant. Also understand the return rate and all of that you're meant to get from, let's say, like a commercial asset. Through the REIT, with an extremely small check, you can actually own basically some square footage in a larger portfolio, risk distributed across geographies, number of assets, number of tenants. So you never have to worry about vacancy risk or having to release and all of that. You have professional management teams that are basically doing this on a daily basis, and super grade A high quality assets. From a return profile, not only are you getting that 7-8% like dividend, which is akin to getting rental from a commercial property that you own. Now, because of the reclassification and the classification within equities, the stock appreciation also is starting to show itself. So, overall returns can match equity returns with all downside protection of a real hard asset investment class.
Sure.
So that, I think, is something that makes it super unique, and people need to maybe understand that a lot more, as they think about investing. I still see people wanting to say that I want to buy office space, for my daughter or something like that. And we're always like, why are you doing that? Buy the REIT. Like, you just buy REIT stocks, or you buy multiple REITs if you want, and let them enjoy that dividend and that cash flow. So that mentality in India is not yet, that understanding is not changed. Like, someone wants to say that, oh, this is my floor. I have this 7th floor in, Prestige Central building. That needs to somewhat.
So people feel like they own some tangible part, whereas you think people who are owning commercial real estate should flip it into a REIT, like should sell that and buy REITs?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And it's like 8% is post-tax. You don't get hit, you don't get hit again on the income side.
Yeah.
There are many benefits that come with it. The other thing is that India, We're still talking commercial REITs.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the US, 90% of the market are REITs. There are residential REITs, there are storage REITs, there are hospital REITs, you know.
Yeah.
There are all of those. So we're still,
Very early.
yeah, very, very early.
And between, like, suppose I own, let's say I'm relatively affluent, I own a house. Outside of that, when I invest in real estate, should I buy a REIT or should I invest in a residential property, a second like, how should somebody think about real estate investments?
Buying your house is a security
Yeah.
thing. I don't think people should look at it as an investment
Yeah.
opportunity. It is more stability. Now I have like this roof over my head. It's an innate thing that humans need. And so buying your home is extremely important. And then, you know, if you have more disposable income and you have a bigger family and you need to buy multiple properties, that makes total sense. I think today there are 3 ways to play real estate, at least from an equity standpoint. DevCos, which are your real estate platforms, right, which are doing full ground up development. These are growth engines, but they're cyclical.
Yeah.
They will have cycles of ramp up like you're seeing today, and then there will be times where you have to bring in new projects or the resi cycle, etc.
So these are listed developer stocks that you
Yeah.
can potentially look at.
And it comes with inherent risk because, you know, ground up risk is from an approval, this, that, it's unpredictable still in India.
Yeah.
You then have the commercial annuity business to be able to, you know, like REITs where you are able to invest, where you could get steady cash flow. It's very stable. There's not going to be too much growth in the stock itself, but it's super safe and that. And now the third angle is flex players, co-working space, all the listed players, where I get to play the momentum of India's growth story from a business angle, GCC, startup growth, entrepreneurship, business growth in an asset-light format and in a high-growth profile. So if you're slightly higher risk appetite or looking for slightly higher growth across the 3 verticals without too much capital, the flex business of flex players are a way to play real estate and play the office boom.
Sure.
Your REITs are a, you know, more hard asset, stable way to play it. And then you have your DevCos, which are
which is, I love the framework because, you know, you've just sort of zoomed out and looked at very different asset classes within real estate also. So what I'm hearing you say is that, you know, own the primary home that you live in. It gives you a lot of security. And then outside of that, you have DevCos, you have REITs, and then you have co-working operators of sorts that you can invest in. No, fair enough. You've given us the journey of the commercial real estate arm of the group, but you also have luxury homes that you do. You also do, there's a school that you run, there's a riding school that you run. Like, how did those diversifications happen? At which point did that happen? Or did that predate the commercial side?
Yeah, so we always started off as luxury residential. I mean, some of the older buildings that you'll see in Bangalore also, which are like the Embassy, Embassy Palace, all of Embassy Woods, all of these are extremely old, high value luxury projects. So that was in the 90s, like mid 90s to 2000s. That's pretty much what we did. And then from Embassy Point and Embassy Square, which is actually on Infantry Road, is where the office story kind of started to happen. And I think there was like a switch that, you know, my dad consciously made to move towards the office segment. This idea of leasing offices was never a thing. You would just build and then, you know, sell to some investors. So holding onto the asset, leasing it, earning the cash flow, raising LRDs, that started becoming a model that, you know, really got developed here through the office boom.
Yes.
Right. As multinationals or blue chip companies started to take space, banks were more willing to fund based on, you know, if it was whatever, IBM or Fidelity taking the space, they weren't lending to Embassy, they were lending with the, you know, backing of Fidelity as a tenant.
Yeah.
So that model started to grow and it became easier to really churn capital rather than residential where you have to build and sell and things like that.
Yeah.
So started with luxury, moved to commercial. And then as we started to build, we ended up getting back into luxury commercial with some large developments like Embassy Lake Terraces, you know, Embassy Boulevard, etc., which are super high-end luxury residential. Along this entire process, we ended up building a property management business also, Embassy Services, which just completed 30 years last year or this year. And that is an ancillary part of like our entire business that takes care of all of the maintenance, upkeep of both residential, commercial, parts of our business, plus does some outside third party open markets type of work.
Yeah.
We were at the Delhi airport, we do HCL, some part of their campus, etc. And if you look at the ecosystem, or the way at least my dad explains it, is that, we were building these office parks for multinational businesses. You have employees that it's housing, but you also were like these multinational businesses needed an ecosystem where CXOs and CEOs from foreign countries would feel comfortable about coming to India and actually living here.
Yeah.
And that's where the luxury apartments, and then finally like the school also ended up becoming a thought process to have high quality IB education, so that when these CEOs and CXOs move here, that within the embassy ecosystem itself,
Yeah.
they'll actually have quality education that they can give, and so they end up staying longer, and then these companies sort of like end up growing.
No, it's fascinating. In fact, we manage a lot of money for these individuals. Their problems are also unique. They have equity in foreign companies. Like a senior person at Google will have equity in the US.
Yeah.
Their questions are around, when should I monetize it? Should I bring the money back to India? And one of the things I'm feeling is that a lot of them are returning to India as much for the business opportunity, but also for the cultural setting that they want to grow up their kids in with what's happening in the US, the concern that at some point they'll have to return. Now, when these guys come to India, they want to stay in homes of a certain type, I guess, and some of the luxury homes that you built are targeted towards them. How do you think about like what are their needs? What are the kind of luxury needs that they have when it comes to their housing?
Everyone is aspirational. They want a good standard of living. What we've seen is the need for apartments or communities that have integrated type of, design as well as amenities and things like that being extremely important. So while the apartment and, the size of that needs to be large and nice, it's all the other ancillary things, F&B to wellness to community spaces, and even just building out the actual community in the association or in the building.
Yeah.
Unlike other developers, we don't actually leave once we've delivered the residential project. Our property management arm ends up managing that, those assets until like for some reason the association asks us to leave. But that's never happened across any of our residential developments, because the work I think that ESPL does, the way we maintain the spaces, it ends up keeping the quality of the apartment high. So even for the buyer, investor, resale, etc., continues to be there. And we help creating this community type feeling within the development. So that's something that they all look for, because they've all come from different places to meet new people, for the kids to make friends. All of that stuff is extremely important.
So this is interesting. You're saying that there's a quality of apartment and there's a size of the apartment. All of that is important. There's also amenities, which is important. But do you also orchestrate the social events as ESPL?
Yes. We try to, or we at least help the association to. I think India generally, we're very communal. We want to gather, and we end up doing festivals, and all of that automatically makes us a lot more engaged on those things than maybe something outside of India, like what you would see in Europe or even in America. We try to help facilitate a lot of that. While a lot of it is run by the association, we are the backbone to try to, help organize all of that. We have an app and all of that we try to get people to engage on. And then there's the ecosystem really around it, what we spoke about, right? Like the place that you go to work is an embassy office park. The school that you send your kids to is sort of like an embassy school. And I think each lends itself to the other, because if you have a high quality school that operates well, high quality education, it talks about, embassy as a brand and will give you a higher trust that, okay, the apartments that they build and the way they run it is also likely to be similar to what I'm experiencing in the school. And being in their office developments is again matching the quality of what we do on the residential side. So all of it needs to,
come together.
yeah.
Yeah. No, very interesting. I think there's a lots to learn in that. Like, I feel like you've chosen a target customer segment and gone after them and building solutions around them
Yeah.
very neatly. Karan, you had a family business, or have a family business which is into commercial, luxury, property management, there's a school, and yet you decide to start something outside the family business or something new. How does that thought process happen? Like, at which point does a second generation feel like I should do something completely different? Was it driven by the fact that you wanted to do something different, or was it an opportunity that you were looking at?
I think both. So, everything that we do is still very much within the family business.
Sure.
It's just that I graduated college, and during my last year of college, I ended up setting up small business of my own, which is a hospitality business.
Okay.
It continues to operate. We have few restaurants. We have a catering business. We manage some food courts and stuff like that. I then went to join the family business because I wanted to understand what real estate in India was like and what we had built and really get into it. For 2 years, I didn't do anything operational. I was just sort of absorbing and listening and traveling and meeting, and being part of meetings and just taking notes and asking questions in the evening. That led me to realize the gap, at least in the Indian commercial market, which was no one was really doing or building anything of quality for startups, small and mid-sized businesses. So while setting up my first business, if I went to meet someone to develop my logo or to do some accounting work, we would end up meeting at some rented apartment, which was so underutilized by that company and not really set up for work, or in coffee shops or something like that. So that was how the idea or the seed of the idea started, that within grade A developments or our larger tech marks, can we actually build or do something for smaller businesses, almost as like a feeder, but we were also doing all this incubation space for companies before we end up giving them the large scale space. So that's how the seed of the idea started, which led me down the path of learning about WeWork and what was happening in the US with co-working spaces, which was not really a thing yet, but it was something that had been birthed out of basically Silicon Valley, startup ecosystem, and just that boom that was happening out of the US, which sort of led us to the path of figuring out a partnership with WeWork rather than building a brand of our own. And, we contemplated that a lot. It was really a franchise partnership that we had put together. And really the idea was that at some point WeWork was meant to buy this business back from us. That was how we had, originally contemplated it. And in my head, I was like, okay, I'll do this for a few years. We'll build it and then, come back into the family business. But I think that being an entrepreneur, doing something on my own has always been something that I've really wanted to do. And this kind of gave me an opportunity to have the best of both worlds. So
yeah, the story of WeWork is one for the books and the movies, but you could have done this entirely on your own. What was the value that you felt WeWork was bringing to the table?
So the day we walked into a WeWork in New York, I think the entire thing smacked me in the face. I struggled with figuring out if we would really be able to do completely on our own, which was the way that they built community, the way that the space was designed in a way that would give you this uplifting feeling every time you walked into. And the last thing, which was also the most crucial and important thing for me at least, was I felt that Indian businesses needed to stop thinking they were just Indian businesses. They need to build to be global businesses. And with the WeWork platform and network and the global extend to this community globally, where different entrepreneurs were able to connect with each other, whether in New York or in London, through the platform. would be extremely powerful for Indian businesses. And we've seen that play out as we build this business where small startups who, really from Bangalore or Bombay suddenly were able to set up shop in Singapore, in Japan, in London, like literally overnight, and end up becoming global businesses. And we took away all the friction, for them. So that was something we would never be able to replicate in my opinion.
Describe this thing, like, because I agree with you, there's a WeWork vibe. When you walked into this WeWork in New York for the first time, what was the setting like? Like, what actually went down? Was it the free beer or was it something else also? Like, what was it about that place?
See, you have to put context to what offices were even like, or what I had experienced. We all had experiences at offices before that. When I walked into and we built so many of these offices, which were whatever 5-foot high cubicle grids, right?
Separating people.
Which you see even today in some like bank offices and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But really 5-foot high cubicle grids expands on the floor like white light pretty much around it.
Tube lights, like.
Yes, and shutters down, right? And just gray and white, like literally that's what offices were.
Yeah.
And when I walked into a WeWork and it was so much natural light, everything, there's common area spaces. They were doing an event there. They were serving like F&B. We did a tour around the space and there were so many different types of companies. And I was like 23, 24 at that time. So if you ask me then and now, or you ask any younger generation, like which version of an office would you want to spend the next 20 years of your life in?
Yeah.
This is the version that I would pick like every single time.
But when you bring this model to India, there is a whole different Indian context. Indian promoters or owners, business owners might need corner offices.
Yeah.
Or even the way of operating was different. Startups may not want to spend that money. They may not have the money to spend. So was it like easy to bring that model, lift and paste it here, or was there challenges in that?
I think the two big things that we did is that we went pretty big from the get-go. Like our first building itself was 140,000 odd square foot. Whereas WeWork average size of centers even in the US were only like 20 to 30,000. Right? We did WeWork Galaxy here in Bangalore and very quickly did our BKC location, which is a 16-floor tower in the heart of, the financial capital basically of the country.
Correct.
So, even something like this self-serve model, in a WeWork, we don't really have butlers or anything like that. You want to go get a coffee, you have to kind of go to the pantry. It's intentionally done because you end up meeting other members, you end up having encounters by chance is what we call it. Like how many moments of this encounters by chance can we create in our space?
Nice.
So that you end up actually that community ends up basically being built.
Yeah.
In India, people want to eat together. They want large dining space. The eating part or lunch is a very communal part of the office experience.
Yeah.
People bring their tiffins from home. They want to share with other employees. They're ordering from outside. Versus in New York at lunchtime, people walk on the streets and actually go to a cafe or go pick up a sandwich or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And similar in London and all of that. So it was all those things that over the last 8 years we've iterated on.
Typically, it's usually harder to copy-paste models. Like if I think about wealth management, globally established wealth managers have struggled in India because the economics are very different, right? So when you Indianize a business model, sometimes it may not really work. And so when you talk to somebody who's bringing a foreign format to India, do you like have some advice for them? Like what are the things not to do?
I think the one thing I was very particular about was not diluting the product. So we ended up spending more than we should have in our first few locations. But that's because past experience that I'd had with global brands coming to India ended up being subpar just because they felt they need to dilute the product because the price and India's value conscious or price conscious, and so you have to do that, like starting with something like McDonald's to whatever it is, like it's always been
A rundown
subpar,
version.
a rundown version.
Yeah.
So that was, I think India's changed a lot.
Yeah.
India's more aspirational. India values value. India values quality, right? So it might take some time, but people will end up seeing the difference and really paying for it. So I would say don't compromise on the actual product and quality just because the pricing model needs to be different. I think you have to figure out how you deliver the same quality, if not better, and figure out the unit economics to or figure out what needs to make it work. I think the other thing is that you have to be very quick to understand what is important culturally and what is okay to hold on to, right? I think if we were very rigid and said that no, this is how WeWork operates, this is how it has to be designed, we would have failed after the first few locations. It was because we were quickly adjusting, we were moving design, we started localizing supply chain. We did all of that very, very quickly. That allowed us to continuously scale and all of that and be close to the customer. I mean, our target audience at that time were actually people my age, luckily. I was 24, 25. We were aiming at people in that 24, 25 bucket. I think if I was 40 and building this business, I would have completely missed the context and who my customer was. And so that helped it catch on as a concept and a brand.
Yeah, so much of that is true, right? Like for us also, like we are building wealth management the way we would want it to be served to us. So I think that's an interesting insight. And for me, like seeing the Inam Sambhav office where WeWork is from the outside, in itself, the product sells itself, right? Because you feel like you've got to work there. Thank you, Karan. This has been fascinating. I think we've covered so much ground from your family's business to how you ran and started WeWork to the REIT to your investments. And thank you so much, Karan.
No, thank you so much for having me here. It was fun.